Welcome to Sheep Talk, everyone. My name is Rush, and this is a channel where we talk about faith, farming, and family. And I have a very dear guest with me today, Mr. Wayne. And it's a delight to have you. We've been talking about having a conversation like this for a long time, and I'm glad to have my dear friend here with me today. And thanks for coming on.
And in your brand new studio.
Yes, yes,
Well, that's fun
exactly.
technology and the new house and the dog and the sheep and the chickens outside watching over us. It's all good.
Yes, they have to examine everyone before they come inside the house. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk with you on here just about some of the stories and how the Lord has worked in your life and through your life. We've had many conversations for those of you out there. Wayne and I over the years have had lots of wonderful conversations. For me, that has been tremendously transformative and edifying to my own heart. We even at one point, I was living with him at one point coming back from Hawaii, and that was some of the most special times in my life, I would say for sure, is that time just conversing over the Lord and the Word and all those things. And so this man has had a profound impact on my life without a doubt. And so it's a joy to have you here and to be able to talk about the Word and the Lord and how he's worked in your life. It's been a longing of mine for, well, probably about 7 years. So this is being fulfilled today here, which is awesome. So I just want to start, Wayne, with just kind of your story, how it all began in coming to Christ, and if you could give us a little bit of that story.
Yeah. I must admit, just first, it is mind-boggling to even contemplate that how God has put it on your heart to desire to share what he has done in and on my heart over the years. It is, but it's always the Lord. It's always the Lord. And that's, as we pray, opening our time together in prayer, we acknowledge and we recognize that all that is good, all that is wholesome, all that is beautiful, it is all that comes from the Lord. And we have the choice of saying, yes, Lord, or no. And it is only by God's grace that he has opened our eyes, opened our hearts, opened our minds to say, yes, Lord, yes, Lord. And then over time, we simply recognize and realize that really the only thing to say as a human being is yes, Lord. And in so doing, we move beyond being simple human beings to men of God. We all of a sudden become that glove on the hand of God. And where his hand goes, we go, because we are that glove. And we have the privilege of riding along with God. And we see the presence, we see that hand moving and unfolding things that in our own ways we would never have imagined or thought to examine or to say yes to. And so I'm just elated that it just absolutely takes my breath away, frankly, that my story is something that anyone would want to hear, let alone share. I was thinking about our time together today. I was kind of reminded of just looking backwards and thinking, when did things kind of take off? And in a way, it was probably when I was 15. I think I was 15 years old. And my dad was in real estate. And in real estate back in those days, in the 60s, you always drove a big car. You had a Cadillac or a Lincoln, so you could drive clients around. I think today you can have a Honda and people just follow each other. But in those days, it was always a big car. And for some reason, I remember sitting in the front seat of my dad's big car. And he turned to me and he said, Wayne, I want you to know you can have anything in life that you want if you're willing to work for it. So at 15, I found myself working 40 hours a week. There was a school program that I was a terrible student. I mean, I was lucky to get B's, or let alone C's or D's, I mean. And so the school, I think it was WEEP. And so you could get out of school, I think about 11 o'clock, and you could go to your job and you would get credit. So at 15, I remember I was 15, but I couldn't drive and I had to hitchhike to work. And I was washing dishes in a no, not a restaurant, but a bakery. And it was always so profound to think, okay, I'm working 40 hours a week. I'm 15 years old, but making a pretty good paycheck. So I was at 15 anyway. It seemed like it. But at 18, I remember I was the only kid in school that was driving a brand new car that I had bought with my own money. I grew up in Los Altos, which was a somewhat affluent area, and there was, some new cars at school, but they were always cars that parents had bought. And my parents, there's no way they'd buy an old car, let alone a new car. But I was driving a new one because my dad had taught me to work. So I figured that if I worked hard enough, I could have anything I wanted. And that desire to have and to want and to make more money just absolutely took over my life. And I was able to accumulate a lot of stuff and ended up, I don't know for at this point in the story, but I ended up having all the stuff I thought would make me happy and wanting to put a gun in my mouth because I realized I had all the stuff. I had a beautiful, beautiful sailboat in the San Francisco Bay that I'd had hand built in Asia, owned my own business. I had a drafting board that sat on the deck next to my in-ground black bottom pool with a hot tub that spilled into the pool. I had a Harley and a 300ZX and a nice home, not a lavish one, but a nice home, cocaine in the bathroom, and kind of all the things that I thought would make me happy or joyful. And realizing that I was in complete despair because I had everything that the world told me, if you have this, if you have that, this will make you happy. And I realized it was a complete lie. It was a total lie. And the only thing I knew to do was to end my life. And so I remember laying in my bed, and I had a little gun storage configured in the wall between the sliding closet doors. And I remember laying there thinking, okay, you can just get up and open the little cubby hole and take that gun out and put it in your mouth. And then I could see my brains on the wall behind the bed. And I remember thinking, so Wayne, part of your despair is that because you have pursued the things of this world, that you have forsaken your children. You have forsaken your wives, plural. You have forsaken your children, plural. And you want to end it because you feel so nasty. And so now what your final statement is, you're going to put your brains on the wall and say, okay, kids, here's my final offering. And I thought, oh, man, that's not going to work. And so it's amazing how God rescued me from that. It was a while before he showed me himself, but in hindsight now, I can see that it was God, though at the time I didn't know it. but I heard the scratching at my front door. And I went to the door, and there was this ugly little dog, looked like Toto, out of The Wizard of Oz. It was a scruffy, gray little thing. It had big blotches of skin missing all over it and hair missing. And it was nasty. And I literally threw rocks at it. Said, go away, go away, go away. And so the next day, this little dog comes back again. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, you are ugly. And so I chased it again. On the third day, the dog came back to my front door, announced himself, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'm supposed to give you a home, which is the last thing in the world I want. I didn't like dogs, didn't want dogs. They licked you. They were gross. And I was inclined to pick that dog up, put it in the car, drove it to the vet, spent $300 or whatever, having them diagnose all the things that were wrong with this ugly little dog. And that dog, we named it Scruffy, and it was my first buddy. Lived with me for quite a long time, until my latest wife moved into the house, and the dog moved across the street. Sorry, that's just reality. But at any rate, it was crazy, crazy times. Just looking back over what and how the Lord has, orchestrated things. It's been fun. Yeah.
Wow. So at that point, like after that, that really despairing time, how did the Lord begin to get your attention? What was that? What was when you first acknowledged that this is God, or is there a God, or what just started the wheels turning? After that, really, and how long was that between that moment of?
I really don't know, but I think it was a few years. And I distinctly remember the event. I don't remember the timeline very well. As you know, I don't have too much of a memory these days. But certain things like this, I remember relatively clearly. And what I remember is it was a Friday night. I didn't have a date, and I felt kind of bad that I didn't have a date. And so my composure was to iron clothes on a Friday night in front of the TV. And I remember this World Vision special had come on the TV. And normally when things like that would come on, I just couldn't, change the channel quick enough, because the reality is I didn't want to see hungry children. I didn't want to see people starving or dying. I mean, it was heartbreaking. And who wants their heart to be broken and you feel like there's nothing you can do about it? And this evening, with my iron in my hand, I guess, I watched. And I watched thousands of bones covered in black skin, and those carcasses of what had been human beings stacked like cords of wood. And it was just horrible. It was adults, children, and it was just thousands. It seemed like it went on forever. And I remember sitting there. My TV was by the door going into my garage, which is where my hot 300Z convertible and my Harley was parked. And out the right-hand side was the pool and the drafting table and the hot tub. And I remember thinking, how can I live the way I do and just ignore the plight of these people. They weren't in the situation. The situation they were in, they were dead, but they didn't get there because they were lazy. They got there because of circumstances beyond their control. And I had no empathy for people that, were kind of homeless when lots of opportunities existed. I knew what it was to work long hours as a young teenager. And I was kind of like, well, if you can't do it, then maybe that's just your lot in life. But I realized, no, this is a different situation. These are people that just circumstantially have ended up dead because of a lack of food. And the program was put on, the show was put on by an organization called World Vision. And at the end of the hour, probably a half hour presentation, there was an 800 number. And I thought, yeah, I could sponsor some kids. And so I called the 1-800 number and sponsored 10 kids. And it was it was a couple $100 a month. I can do that. And so this was on a Friday night, and then come Monday, World Vision, somebody called me and said, "Hey, Mr. Evans, we know that these shows are very dramatic and they will tug at your heartstrings, but we don't want you to, sponsor for a couple of months, and then, and sponsoring 10 kids, a lot of kids." And it's funny because now World Vision swears they do not make those phone calls. They do not give people the option to get out of the deal that they have signed up for. And yet somehow I did get that call. But because of that call, I also became completely convicted that because they had given me an out, that I knew this was an organization that I wanted to be involved with. I didn't fully understand what that meant, but I wanted to be involved with this organization. Yeah, they were there to raise money. Somebody's, they can't feed the kids. They need people to come alongside them to help care for those children. And God was calling me to do that, though I had no idea it was God. I just thought I had enough money to do it, so I could do it. So it was pretty cool.
So that call gave you that resolve to say, I'm in it. I'm in.
Exactly.
I'm sticking with it.
Which they don't do.
Yeah.
That's still don't know. I don't know that I because they swore, because I told them sometime later. They said, "We don't do that." And I said, "Well, I got a call." They said, "No, you didn't." I mean, yeah, I did. I'm saying that, I still don't know what to think, because they swore they don't do that.
Wow.
But I did get a call, and that was what gave me the resolve I ended up sponsoring 300 kids before it was over.
Wow.
But that night I sponsored 10, but over the years ended up sponsoring 300 children.
Wow.
Very cool. All over the world. Yeah, it was very fun.
That's amazing. So at that point, that kicked off, and you didn't have any acknowledgement of God. You just had this kind of like, I'm doing this.
Right.
Like this seems like the right thing to do. And what was the next, step toward the Lord as the Lord's seeming to draw you in here?
Yeah, he was definitely busy. I didn't know it. He was busy. So I don't remember. I guess there was an opportunity to drill a well. And my parents, there's no Christian background in my home. The Bible, rules and regulations, how to live, how not to live, never a focus. So my sisters and I grew up with, it feels good, do it. And we ended up getting a lot of trouble. And so there was no God, there was no presence of God, there was no church, there was no Bible, nothing. And my parents, though, in their mid-60s, had come to faith. Yeah, I still don't know. My younger sister, who at 12, through a school program, had come to faith. And I don't know if my younger sister Bonnie was the one that was influential in them coming to faith, but somehow Bonnie was the first in our family. And again, she was about 12, and my parents, who were in their mid-60s, came to faith. And so I went to my mom. She was always generally easier to talk to about money. And so I went to my mom and I said, "Hey, would you want to go in halves and drill a well together?" And it was about 10 grand to drill a well in this particular area. And so she said, "Yeah." And so I discovered later that when you give at a certain level, I guess it was like if I had a customer
Mm.
who was, operating at a certain level, I might be inclined to say, hey, you want to go have lunch or whatever,
Yeah.
get to know that customer better. So the same thing. And so I got a knock. I was, my office was in my living room at the time. And I remember I got a knock on the front door, which was across from my desk. And this tall, good-looking older guy walked in the door. His name was Chet Starr, and he was the representative for World Vision in Northern California. Sweet, wonderful man of God. And again, I didn't know that's what he was, but later I figured it out. And so he came through and said, thank you. The well had, been the lure, I guess, whatever. That was the trigger for them. And so that led to an invitation to attend a dinner where the president of World Vision was present and sharing. And this was probably, as I'm thinking about it, this was probably the first time I had a sense of something greater than myself being present. And
how old were you, by the way?
I was almost 40.
Almost 40.
Yeah, I was almost 40. So, yeah, because I was 40 when I met the Lord. So I was 38, 39. Yeah, right in there. And so I went to this dinner, and what I realize now is it was Bob Seipel was the president at the time, and Bob must have shared the gospel, because I heard hope. Again, I didn't know what the gospel was. I didn't know what the message of Jesus was. And I remember coming away from that dinner thinking, I heard hope, but I had no clue of what the source of that hope was. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's so funny. I just remembered I took a new date on that dinner, and we're sitting at tables with probably 8 people, at each table. And so you're asked to, introduce yourself and introduce your mate. And I couldn't remember my date's name. So here I am at this Christian, which means nothing to me still at this point. I'm at this Christian dinner with the president of World Vision and can't tell you who the name is of this young lady that I've invited to go to this. Oh my God, I was just a wreck. But again, it just fascinates me still, because I heard hope. It wasn't a sales pitch kind of hope. It wasn't, well, if you do this and this and that, it was something, I'll use the term with reluctance, magical, but there was something profound in what he shared. And to this day, I don't know exactly what it was, but the only thing that makes sense is that it was the gospel. Yeah, because it was beyond, understanding. It was beyond comprehension. So that's where God kicked it off. Yeah, right there. Yeah.
Wow.
Kick things into gear.
And so from that, it's interesting that you say that what stood out to you was hope.
Yeah.
In light of what you shared about evidently a year or two prior to that, when you were at the lowest point of your life.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. So hope was like, I was desperate for hope. But that's a good point. I was desperate for hope. And I'm sure, as you say, that's why the Lord, put those pieces together the way he did, at the time. He doesn't waste anything, right? He doesn't waste a gun in my mouth, or, he uses it. He wants to get us to that point where we can respond. We can identify. I heard hope. I don't get it. I don't understand what it was. But that's a very good. I'm glad you said that. I hadn't thought of that before, but you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so that dinner date happened. Well, the experience happened. and then from that point, do you remember her name now?
No. Well, no clue.
Well,
doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, so from that point, what was the next thing that took place.
Yeah. So, interestingly, I don't know if it was at that dinner or a subsequent event, but there was talk of a trip to Africa. And I was asked if I wanted to go to Africa. And I was told it was, the expenses would be about $5,000. And this is, this is almost 40 years ago. $5,000 was quite a bit, still quite a bit of money, but it was more then. And the thought of going to Africa. I mean, who doesn't want to go to Africa? Who doesn't have pictures of lions and tigers and elephants and giraffes in their mind, and being on a safari? And so you name Africa, and I think, oh, that sounds like fun. And I must admit, I don't know that I thought of all those people I had seen dead years ago, years before. That was in Africa. At any rate, and I remember going to my new friend, the guy who'd come in my front door at my office/house, and he was the one who extended the invitation to go to Africa. And I don't even, again, just a sign of the Lord was pressing in. And I said, man, I would love to go to Africa. That sounds, delightful. But I said, wouldn't it make more sense to take that $5,000 and use it to feed kids? How do I go and have a, kind of an adventure, and other people are hungry or needing water or whatever? And so I remember he got a big smile on his face. He said, honestly, Wayne, he said, I wish more people would ask that question. And he said, in your case, I really believe you're meant to go. Like there's a purpose in you going. There's a purpose in you being there. And of course, again, I was clueless, but it was kind of music to my ears. I mean, okay, I don't have to give the poor kids my money. Instead, I can go to Africa and enjoy the fruits of being in Africa. So after much shenanigans, the trip was on, the trip was off. It was a conflict with my schedule. The trip was off again. And ultimately, after several months of God just working through all these trials and tribulations, the trip to Africa occurred. And we started the trip in Nairobi, Kenya. Yeah.
It's so interesting. There's just a couple things that stand out to me. I just want to say before we go forward from Nairobi, Kenya. One is that when what stood out to you in that banquet was the word hope. It's interesting because you needed hope.
Yeah.
But you also were giving hope.
Yeah.
At the same time to kids, to kids who would otherwise maybe lose their lives for reasons that are awful.
Yeah.
And fix
water's a big deal. Yeah.
And so it's like, that's, I don't know, this is an observation from your story. And the other thing is that your trip, that it was like, it's on, it's off, my work schedule's in the way. It's interesting how as Christians, we know that we have an enemy, an adversary who wants to keep us from hope, from truth. And, but the Lord is faithful. And I just see that there's a battle there, but that ultimately, and you ended up going, obviously it resulted in the greatest miracle of your life.
Yeah. That's interesting that you see that, because I hadn't seen it until just now, but I definitely see it now. And you're absolutely right. Yeah. And you say that there's always a battle. There's always a battle. And the only way we can beat the one who's at the door is by saying yes to God. Yes, God. Right. Yes, God. Yes, God. Regardless of the cost, whatever the perceived cost. And you know this well also. We all do. Anyone that's walked with Christ for a while knows the cost of saying, yes, Lord. And certainly Jesus did. Thy cup, or thy will be done, not mine. No. And so we are all taking a drink out of that same cup with Christ when we say, thy will be done, Lord, not mine.
Wow. So Nairobi.
Ended up in Nairobi, Kenya, at the Serrano Hotel, and had been in Kenya about 4 hours. We arrived relatively late at night, and about 4 hours, I'm going to guess, into my visit, I had what I had never had before, which is known a kidney stone.
Ooh.
So I'm in a language where nobody speaks, for the most part, nobody speaks English. I certainly don't speak Swahili. I'd watched way too many movies because I literally stood in front of a mirror with I guess they didn't screen that heavily back then because I believe I had a pocket knife. And I remember thinking, whatever this pain is, it's right below the skin. And if I'm careful and maybe fast, I can make an incision and pull it out. You know, like you see the guy pull the bullet out, right? I'm standing there with my pants, half down, and just I'm in so much pain I can hardly talk. I mean, anything that would make you think about opening yourself up. And I'm thinking, I don't think I can do this. And so my friend Chet was across the hall, and it's 3-4 o'clock in the morning about now. And so the guy from San Francisco goes and knocks on Chet's door in the middle of the night with his pants half down. And Chet says, I opened that door, and I did not know what to think. The San Francisco guy is, I don't know what. Well, I was in so much pain, I really could not speak. And I remember walking into his room, and like behind us here, there's a corner. And I just went to that corner, leaned into the corner, and just fell onto the floor. I couldn't even talk. I was in so much pain. And so Chet has decided there's something wrong with me, calls the front desk. We get a doctor who does not speak English. He's African, and he speaks Swahili. But through sign language and, I'm holding my gut or whatever, he can figure out that it's probably, a kidney stone. And so he gives me some pain pills. And after a while, those pain pills eventually kick in and knock the pain down to where, I can go back to my room. And then the next day, because nobody in the hospital is going to speak English, I need to go to the hospital with somebody who can speak English. Well, the only person that's handy at that moment is our driver. We had a driver to lug us around. And so the driver takes me to the hospital. They have me go in. They put me in a gown and do x-rays. And then they come back out and they, hand me the gown again and say, would you do the x-rays again? And I'm thinking, that doesn't sound good, but yeah, okay. And so I go in again, and they're gone a while, and they come back again, and with a gown. And I'm thinking, I'm not leaving Africa. I'm going to die right here in Africa. Now, because it was so late and the group had they had someplace they needed to be, so the driver, who was the interpreter, left and left me in the hospital, speaking English alone, not Swahili, thinking I'm not leaving the hospital. And they took, I don't know if they took x-rays 3 or certainly 3, maybe even 4 times. And, then it was figured out that I had kidney stones. And, they gave me whatever it was that I needed to deal with that kidney stone. And we ended up going into the field, I guess, the next day and wandering around. Well, I don't know if it was the day after that I decided, I don't speak English. I'm writing out prayers because they pray 3-4 times a day. And I've never said a prayer in my life. And so I'm trying to fit in, right? I got all these guys. One guy's a pastor. a couple of, pretty high power guys in the community, and I realize now, very solid Christians, men of God. And I'm thinking, so I was trying to write a little prayer, thinking, well, what would a prayer sound like? And, what might I want to say, with this group? And so, after a couple of days of writing these things out and thinking, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in prayer, I said, I'm getting on an airplane and I'm going home. This is baloney. I'm lying. I can't keep faking it. I can't be trying to be somebody I'm not. And so one of the guys was a psychologist, and our chemistry was off. But so I was really down this one day as I'm contemplating, what are the available flights back to San Francisco. And he walks up to me, he says, so what's the matter with you today? He says, you really seem like you're out of it. I looked at him and I said, you know what? I don't believe in God. I don't believe in prayer. And I'm trying to write little prayers to try and fit in. And I said, I don't believe any of this. I don't know if I said crap or not, but I may have. And so he looks at me and he says, so don't pray. And he shrugs and walks away. Those words, don't pray, so don't pray, were maybe the most powerful words spoken to me at that point, because they removed all of the, I need to fit in, I need to somehow create that which I'm not, I need to be somebody that I'm not. And those words, so don't. It was like, be who you are. And he didn't say it that way, but that is what he said. And I just felt, what seemed like hundreds of pounds of weight, just toppling off my shoulders.
Like a release.
Like a release. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Just pulled the ripcord. All that weight fell off. And then all of a sudden, I was okay being a guy who didn't pray, didn't believe in God, but I could just be, in this group as an observer. And so that's what I did. I hung out and, wandered around with these guys as a non-believer. And so it was an interesting time, but it was wonderful that I was able to not get on an airplane, because the greatest thing that ever happened to me, I don't know, I guess God would have found another way, but I'm glad he didn't have to.
Yeah. And so that experience that you had, that I suppose we're going to hear about in a second, happened toward the end of that trip.
Well, actually, so it was at the end of our time in Kenya. We eventually left Kenya and went to Malawi. It was Malawi we went to next. And so that trip to Africa included visits at two different stops. The next one was very heartbreaking, because we visited a refugee camp, and that's another story which maybe we'll get to.
Yeah.
Not. So so we would the guys, it was okay. Wayne wasn't a believer. That was fine. I could be in the group, and nobody cared. What do they care? They're not in control of my faith or lack of. And so we would just, we'd sit in a circle and they would pray around me. And so I remember we was sitting in a hotel room, I think my room at this particular evening, and there was two double beds probably. And then there was the thing, there's where the lamp sits, and some, some dressers and a chair or two. And so there was guys sitting on each corner of the two beds, and then on the chair, and then on the dresser or whatever. And so the guy to my right prayed, and then I'm thinking, then the guy to my left is going to pray next. Well, the guy in the middle started to profess Jesus as Lord and Savior. And I'm realizing the voice is coming from here. And I remember I had a pocket shirt, and I remember literally looking in the pocket to see who was talking. and realized, oh no, Wayne, that's you. And I had the thing that so amazes me even now and then and now is that there was no thought ahead of time. Well, tonight's the night. Or I've heard all these wonderful things that are going to lead me to want to, profess faith in Jesus. Nothing. I was just in the presence of men of God. They were praying, and I've seen a lot of things at this point, been subject to, endless prayer. And I gave my life to Christ that night. And again, just looking in my pocket, trying to figure out who's talking, and then had an insatiable desire to read the book of Matthew, the first book in the New Testament. And so it was just, I don't know. Yeah, still after, so I was 40. I'm almost 77 now. So, in almost 37 years ago, God used that circumstance in the Serrano Hotel in Nairobi, Kenya, and put the heart of Christ in my mouth and subsequently into my being. And one of the first things God did, I was just so overwhelmed. I'm 40 years old, and I'm just coming to faith, just believing that there's not only a God, which is fine. Most people believe there's a God, but I'm believing in this Jesus Christ, and still just absolutely profound. And one of the first things God did, one of the first things I remember God doing, is He asked for my boat. And I'd had this beautiful boat. It was the queen of the San Francisco Boat Show. It was a handmade, custom-made boat. I'd had it made, I forget which country in Asia. All beautiful, heavy-duty, world-class sailing seaboat. And the interesting thing is, I had this boat built. I'd never sailed a boat in my life, not even a dinghy. I had never set foot in or on a sailboat. And yet I had just committed a lot of financial resources to building. And I thought, well, there's no point in starting with a little one because I'll just want to get a bigger one. And I thought, well, I'm going to start with where I think I want to end up. So I thought, well, I want a boat that I can sail around the world in. And that's what I wanted to do. And so I thought, well, I'll start with that boat. I guess the only caveat I wanted a boat that was small enough to single hand if I had to sail alone, if I ended up alone on the boat. So, but the idea was it would suit, 3 or 4 people okay. And so at any rate, so I had a boat built, and and I was sailing in San Francisco Bay, and it's really cool. Taking people out, sailing on the bay, sailing at night. It really is an extraordinary privilege to sail in the bay, particularly at night when the bridges are lit up and the skyline of San Francisco and Oakland. And it's just amazing to be out there in the middle of that dark bay at night. And at any rate, God, one of the first things God did is He asked for my sailboat.
And so with that, you went to Kenya,
right?
Your first trip,
right?
You came to Christ.
Yeah.
You came back. Now with the boat, did you have that boat for
prior to going to Africa?
A year or two before, or
yeah, 2 years.
So
3 or 4 years, maybe.
So at the point when you were gonna take your life, you had already had the boat.
Oh, I already had the boat.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I had everything.
And so when you came to Christ, you came to Christ, this was something that you loved.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the Lord. So how long after when you came back from Kenya did that begin? Like I want the boat. I
don't really know. It seems like it was immediate. I'm sure it wasn't. There was lots of little things that were occurring. I remember one of them being Yeah, this is significant too. This is pretty cool. My business partner at the time was an Iranian Muslim. He's my business partner. Really liked the guy, still love the guy. And his dad was a mullah. He grew up in Iran, went to school, I forget where. Very smart, and had come to America. And I invited him to become a business partner. And one of the things very early on is God invited me to pray at company functions. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to, how can I do that? But I was convicted. God's asking me to pray. And so I thought, well, I'll go to Amir, right? That was the name, Amir Mohammedian. Great guy. Still a great guy. And I went to Amir and I said, Amir, I've got this newfound faith. And I said, I really think I'm meant to pray at company functions, but I just don't know. And Amir, my Muslim friend, says, Wayne, I think if God has told you to pray, you ought to pray. So I laugh to this day that it was my Muslim friend that told me to pray. I don't know if he knew what that implied, or I certainly didn't know what it implied, but we prayed. I prayed at, I guess, every company function, dinners, meetings. If the company was gathering in whatever context, it would be prayer would preload it. And it's funny because years later, it was because of that prayer, was the heart of a lawsuit, and that I was sued in a very difficult time in life. And at the heart of that was people were complaining that I was forcing my Christianity on them. And so, yeah, that was another interesting time.
Wow.
But yeah,
it is interesting because you felt like the Lord was saying pray, and you obeyed. It's so, and it was through your Muslim friend that happened.
Yes, yeah.
But it's so it's for me in my life, it's been easy to really, when you're asked to do something that's uncomfortable or difficult, it's really easy for me to go, yeah, I don't think maybe I should, to kind of maybe try to go a different direction or make an excuse or whatever.
Right.
But that's one of the things I admire about you, is when you feel like the Lord is telling you to do something, you do it.
Yeah.
And
well, I think probably because my life was such a mess by the time he introduced himself. And even, when I leave the house, I wear either a Charlie Kirk hat or I wear a Trump hat. And I just have been convicted that through the years that be who you are all the time, and say it to the world around you. And so I don't know that I would consider Trump a Christian, maybe not, but I'm convicted that God is using him one way or another. And so I stand with him, not because of what he professes, but simply because of how God uses this, this crazy, guy.
Yeah. Well, it is
in spite of that,
Yeah. Well, I like that harkens back to me with what you said, which really, really spoke to my heart, just as you were sharing, like when that guy, your psychologist friend, said, then don't pray, or so don't pray. And you were released to be who you are. And it seems like at that moment that left a mark on you for life.
Yeah, that's
not just for that moment to be freed up to, because you can't come to Christ. You can't if you're trying to be something, and that in that effort to try to do something, just because everyone else around you is doing it, it becomes a wall from actually coming.
Yes.
So you're pretending, you're trying to write prayers, you're trying to act like you are, so no one will believe you're not. Meanwhile, that's a barrier from actually coming. So it's like that man and what he spoke to you released you to be honest with who you are before these godly men. And that's really what set the stage for you to actually come.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and that's marked your life to this day.
Absolutely.
You are who you
That's
are
right now.
And you're and that's what I love about you is your honesty with where you're at, whether you're struggling with something or whether you're thinking something or supporting something. You've never been ashamed to say, this is who I am, and that's something that a lot of people are in bondage because they're not able to be who they are, because they want to fit in or because they want to project an image or some kind of persona, and that actually hinders them from being free to be who they are. Whether that is something that is maybe at the moment not very glamorous, or it is something beautiful and glamorous. But that's just I just made that connection because I've known you for long enough to know who you are, how you operate, and stuff. And I'm like, I never heard that story. Of all the stories I've heard you share, I've never heard the story about the psychologist. Or at least
it's really pivotal.
But it's really it's really made a mark, and that's pretty profound.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's amazing. It's so getting back to the boat. When the Lord asked you to, for the boat, how did that all go down? What was that like? Because you love that boat.
Yeah, I was going to retire. In fact, I had a buyer for the boat. I mean, I was far enough along in the deal, meaning I was in the process of retiring when I met the Lord. I actually had a buyer. I mean, I had a buyer for the company. When I say the boat, I had a buyer for the company, and I was in the very preliminary. But in been out, I guess, sailing on the boat, in fact, with a guy, and he had agreed. He was a competitor, and we had kind of like agreed that he would be interested in buying the company. And so I thought, okay, well, here's my exit strategy. And then I went to Africa. And so then the Lord, when he convicted me that it was, you're going to sell the boat and you're going to give the proceeds to me. And I thought, okay, I think I'd read someplace where, God wants a tithe of 10% or something. And I thought, I had refinanced my house. This was like half of my worldly wealth at the time. And, which wasn't a whole lot, but but at any rate, it was what it was. And, so I thought, oh, okay. Well, I owned the boat free and clear. I thought, well, I can sell the boat and give you 10%. Boat market in San Francisco was hot, right? Nobody looked at my boat. Month 2 comes along, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe I misunderstood God, and I, just in my mind, I'm saying, okay, I'll give you 20%. That'll make him happy, right? And so I, in my mind, say, okay, Lord, I'll give you 20%. Month comes and goes. Boat market's hot, no buyers. Okay, I'll give you 30%, 40% over the course of a year. As soon as I got to, okay, the boat is yours. I had a buyer, and in a very short amount of time. So the proceeds immediately went to World Vision, and all of the proceeds went to World Vision. Then I got a report from World Vision, and those proceeds funded 10 different missions, within World Vision. And I remember getting that list. I wish I still had it, but I remember getting that list and thinking the boat was cool. But I'm looking at that list, and the boat was cool. I'm looking at that list, and I'm thinking, the boat was good for Wayne and a few of his friends. That list impacted a lot of people, and mostly me, I guess, in hindsight, because God convicted me that the things of the world, when I've been wanting to put a gun in my mouth because the things of the world didn't satisfy, he also convicted me, well, the things of the world can be used by God to accomplish and to achieve God's desires for his children, for his creation. And so my sailboat, which meant, seemed like everything to me, all of a sudden, again, supported 10 different ministry and missions, all within World Vision. But I just thought, this is awesome. So the attitude of giving up and selling or using, I realize now that, God had actually put something in my hand. I now believe God has simply used me as a savings account, and periodically he comes along and wants to make a withdrawal. And so, and then when he does, if it's just sitting in the savings account, that's really not very exciting. But when he makes a withdrawal and does something profound, and you realize you had the privilege of being a part of it, nonetheless, you didn't do it, but you had a part of it, and it's pretty exciting. When God does profound things, it's fun to be a part of whatever that is that he's doing. So it's just, it's good stuff.
So at that point in time, like when that happened with the boat, which I feel like I've had some of those moments where it's like, okay, Lord, here's a little bit, and it's like, and it's that all testing, yeah. But that's a significant part of really your identity. Is this boat you had and this investment you had in it and the things you could do with it, and it's just amazing that the Lord, how that worked out. And as soon as you had that heart of, okay, it's all yours, you had a buyer.
Yeah.
Yep. And what an amazing, I'll just cut that real quick. What an amazing testimony and story. And so from that point on, when you had, the boat deal was over, and you had yielded, how much longer did you have your company, and how did your Christianity affect your life as a business owner, and what was that like?
Actually, it was delightful, because, again, God had convicted me that I should never be embarrassed. I should never be ashamed of him. And because I'm in Silicon Valley, again, we're a little bitty pissant company, but nonetheless, we had Apple and HP, and we had some significant companies that were our clients, and we were in the fire alarm business, and we were kind of known as the company to do business with. We were beyond reproach, with our word. We gave word, and one of the interesting things is fire alarm, which what we were doing was, it's one of the few things that will prevent a building from getting occupancy, meaning that, somebody can move in. Well, buildings aren't of any value until you can get tenants in them and you're collecting rent, right? So occupancy day is significant. And it wasn't uncommon for the fire department, the fire marshal, to come in and do their inspection. In the fire alarm system, they couldn't get occupancy. So the delays caused by fire alarm systems that weren't really ready on the day of occupancy was a big deal. And so we'd work, around the clock, literally 24 hours, 2 or 3 shifts a day, to make sure that, the C of O day was the day that they got their permit. And so we became known as the company that made it happen. And so we literally got, I think one contract was like $1 million. It wasn't even a contract. It was just here's the job. When it's over, you send us a bill. And it was almost $1 million. It was just based upon make it happen. And so that was probably the most significant thing in business, maybe from a business standpoint, that I appreciated, is that people just trusted us, trusted. And we were trustworthy. And it certainly wasn't me. Obviously, there was a staff there who had really, really aspired. And as I say that, I realize, I think people knew that we were a highly integrity company. And if you weren't, you didn't stay, because you would bring stuff to the company that wasn't suitable for the company. I remember letting people go because they had a different attitude towards business than I did. And so, we were, and I think being a Christian all of a sudden, because as you know, what God's word says, and then all of a sudden you start using that as your magnetic compass to direct your life. You know what it says, and so maybe you're less inclined to want to cheat a little bit here, cheat a little bit there, or, bend the rules or whatever. You think, no, I need to do that which pleases God. And if I do that which pleases God, then I discover over time that that's the best, the best place any of us can be.
One of the things I notice about you is that you're very good, in my opinion, at recognizing people's strengths and putting them where they can succeed. So like in a company setting, I could see you as a person, in your running your company, you hire somebody who is capable, you recognize what their strengths are, and you set them free to do that. You don't micromanage.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, you find somebody who has the strengths to fill a position, and you can recognize that in them and then set them loose, and then, they just thrive in that environment.
Yeah.
Because you put them in the right environment.
Yeah.
That's
got to be the right person.
That's
not everybody does well.
Yeah. Yeah.
People who want to do well, though, that's the only place they can do well.
Yeah.
Because they can't live under that micromanagement.
Yeah.
So I needed people that were capable, because I didn't have the capacity to micromanage them.
Mm-hmm.
But I could find people that wanted, like me, to be successful, and we could kind of come to a general understanding of what success looked like, and have at it. Go be successful.
Yeah.
Make a financial arrangement that worked for everybody, and people did. I mean, certainly was not me, but I was. God brought some really amazing people who worked very, very hard to make the company successful. And with time, it became more and more focused upon him.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, it's cool. It's cool to see that. It's a something that I've admired about you, because like that actually brings the morale up when you put people in places where they can thrive, and they enjoy what they do. And I think the morale and the relationships within a company or any kind of organization, for that matter, like recognizing spiritual gifts in people and setting them, loose to, do what God has gifted them to do, is I think it's a gift. And I could imagine the morale was pretty high at the company, because you still have relationships with guys you worked with.
Yeah.
The company, which that's pretty profound.
Yeah. I had one guy. I mean, it was so interesting to me you say that. So one of the guys I'm still really close to was our warehouse manager. Along with a contracting business, we also had a distribution business. And so we did contracting sort of out the front door and distribution out the back door. And I was interviewing for a new warehouse manager. That was cool, too, because I had a guy who was gay, and he was my warehouse manager. And I knew he was gay, but he did a great job. And I mean, I didn't have to approve. What I approved or disapproved of was how he did his job. He did his job very well. And I never forget that I was a Christian at this point. And he came to me and he said, "Wayne, I need to quit today." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he said, "I got AIDS." And I said, "What are you going to do for insurance?" He says, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, who's going to take care of you?" "I don't know." "And how are you going to live?" "I don't know." And I thought, okay, so I'm professing to be a Christian. Yeah, you got AIDS. I know why. But how can I let you walk out the door knowing that if you walk out the door unemployed, you have no insurance, you have no income, you have nobody to take care of you, you have no way of paying your bills. So I said, I'll tell you what, you need to stay here. You need to stay here. You need to be really careful. I'm not going to tell a soul. And then you're kind of playing God, because if he does get hurt and somebody else contracts AIDS, it could cost them their life. And somebody at the end, and so you go, oh my gosh. At the end of the day, what was the right thing to do? And I thought, I got to stand by this guy. and not throw him under the bus and think, oh, I got a way out. It's like, no. And so we stood by him, and I don't remember, how much longer he was there, but by the time he left, I was confident that things were going to be as good as they were going to be for him, apart from him coming to faith. But there was another guy interviewed for the job, and he's the one that is still friends with me. And this goes back like 30 years ago, right? And Bill and I are still friends. Bill is an avid Christian, and more so now than he was then. But he told me, he says, Wayne, when you offered me a job, I had a job offer at another company for more money. But he was a believer, and I didn't fully grasp this at the time, but he said, I really felt I was meant to be here in your company. So Bill was the one who made sure that every package that left our distribution business had a tract in it. So we had a stack of tracts. So I had a stack of Bibles at my desk. Costco was selling NIV Life Application Bibles, and I'd buy half a dozen at a time, and they would sit behind my desk. And Bill had a stack of tracts of the gospel and every box that left the back door. And the message. I remember one customer called and said, I am so tired of getting these tracts. And he said, would you please stop sending these? And I said, you know what? I said, I really have no way of monitoring, what Bill does in the back. And I said, the only way I think we can really solve your problem is if you, take your business someplace else. And I said it, I'm sure I said it nicely because I believe he continued to do business with us. But Bill, that same guy who was making sure every box that went out the back door had a tract in it, he is the one who is growing exponentially. And he and I visit a couple times a week, and he routinely will say, he says, the growth that I had in the Lord was a byproduct of being at DFP. And so, and he had a great influence upon me. And the fact that every package that left the warehouse had a tract in it was a great, and then he would attend, we had Bible studies in the conference room, and Bill would always be a part of the Bible studies, or, whatever there was that had to do with God, Bill was a part of it. So it was really cool to have somebody that was, we ended up with quite a few people that were pretty strong Christians. And we had people, we had Muslims, we had gay people, we had, left-wing people, we had right-wing people, we had, and because we were in Silicon Valley, I didn't hire people because of their ethnicity. I definitely hired people that could do the job that needed to be done. And I was convicted that, to the best of my ability, in that Silicon Valley is a very diverse setting, I wanted the company to be diversified. Diversified Fire was the name of the company, but I really wanted the company to show the diversity of, Northern California, and it did. Definitely did.
Well, what's amazing too is that has followed you, from my observation of you, even up into today. Your ability to hear somebody's story or see somebody that others wouldn't necessarily maybe approach, that you're like, hey, come over here. Yeah, let's have a conversation, or, figure something out, for somebody who's going through a hard time. And so that is a thread throughout your life as well. And I wonder if it was birthed through, that mindset you had with your company, as far as hiring.
Well, I think once God is present, he's present in everything, right? So kids, family, I didn't do very well with family, but, and God is little by little, even after all these years, God is showing me and providing opportunity for restoration in my family. And, the things that I wanted to have happen in family didn't occur. And yet, little by little, they are now. And so I am very, very thankful for that. And again, recognizing that, I've been a lot of painful lessons that I have needed to learn, still learning. You realize there's lots more to learn every day,
Mm.
and you just got to be willing to say yes, Lord. Some of it's some of it really hurts, as you know too. Yeah, yeah.
By all means.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah. So coming out of DLC, because I've never, I don't think I've ever asked you this question. What was the season or moment that you realized that it was time to retire from the company or sell the company? And then how did you end up coming up here? In Oregon, like what was was that something that the Lord convicted you of, or was that just an something that was going on in that time in the world with business? What was that really prompted you?
Yeah, good question. And I have to, I'm going to do my best to answer it. And I don't have a kind of a sustained response that I would normally have for questions like this. I realize in hindsight, I knew I'd been working full time since I was 15, and I had been self-employed for almost 50 years at that point. I was a bad student. It was amazing that, I was ever even remotely quote unquote successful, because I just didn't have, in my mind, I didn't have the makeup for it, and what I'm saying is it took a lot of work, and I had a wonderful staff. Frankly, my ex-wife was a significant contributor to all of that company as well, and Diane, and we had a good run. And I realized, I guess at 60, I didn't. Oh, that's right. I think we were facing what looked like a downturn, and I realized I needed to have the gumption to weather. I was confident we would survive it, but I needed to weather it and then ride it back out the other side. And I just didn't think I had the depth and the health to do that. And so became convicted that, okay, I think it's just prudent to move along. And it's fire alarms are not something a lot of people want to invest in, as a business. And I had sold a previous business to Honeywell many years earlier, another business as fire alarm company that I'd had at Honeywell, and that was fun. Didn't make any money, but it was a great experience. And so I'm not even sure how the word got out that DFP was for sale, but we ended up being contacted by a big international company, and they were global at this point. They had alarm presence around the world, and they wanted to develop one in the United States. And so they were looking at buying like maybe 10 or 12 companies strategically located, in the primary metropolitan areas across the U.S. And so they started looking at, San Francisco and the Silicon Valley. And so they came looking for a business. And these guys, they did business acquisitions as, this is what they did. And so, oh my gosh, it was, it was painful, because they would reel you in and get you right there to the edge of the boat, and then they'd say, they'd let you swim off, and they'd reel you back in. And I don't know, about the second or third time they reeled me in, and I said, I'm cutting the line. Go away. I said, I can't do this. I don't have. And they said, oh, okay, I guess it's time to land the deal. But these guys were just professionals, and in my mind, I'm just a young punk still. I have no clue what to do. But these guys, this is what they did. They bought and sold businesses. So,
Mm.
they were pros at this. They were,
Mhm.
I was to the high stakes poker game with all the high stakes player, and I was still playing gin rummy in my parents' backyard. I was clueless. And so, and fortunately, the deal did go through, and it ended up well in that we had two offices at the time. We had one in San Jose and then another one in Oakland. Both offices, both managers, very successful, each of them very influential in their respective markets. And so those guys the company stayed intact for a few years. And then little by little, those key employees decided they wanted to move on and, do something different. So they ended up leaving this big international company. But
And what year was that?
let's see.
So
let's see. I came to faith in 1990, and I moved up here in about 2000. Oh, let's see, about 2011.
Mm.
All right. What's this? 26? No, 2000. I'm sorry, about 2005. Yeah, 2006, something like that. Yeah. So I came up looking for. I wanted a 2,000-foot, 2,200-foot house on 2 acres. And I wanted to buy some investment real estate, bought some real estate, put offers on some properties, and the ones I wanted to buy to live in, the deals didn't come together. And then the offer on buying property came to pass, and that looked like a good investment. And so ended up, buying property and building a big house.
Where you're at now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful spot.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just amazing. Some of these things I mean, we've had many, many conversations over the years, but some of these things I hadn't heard before.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool to hear for the first time, and then put pieces together, like understanding like where some of the traits, obviously the Lord, the Spirit of God in you, but where some of your, the good things of the way you are now have like been birthed from, where the Lord really did that work in your life. And it's really interesting. It's really just fascinating to hear your whole story.
And the reality is, I still think, one of the things God did along with asking for the boat, he asked for 50 cents of every dollar I made.
That's more than 10.
That's more than 10. And I guess it must have come after the boat. And again, I said, and the irony for me is that money is what I cared about. So that's where God went. He went after the money. He knew more than anything else what he needed to break. That, and he gave me deep prostate cancer, so that helped in that arena. And so, but he went after the money. And so he asked for the boat, then he asked for 50 cents on the dollar. And I can honestly remember praying, Rush, at one time. I said, Lord, you got to quit giving me so much money. Even though I'm responding to your prompting, I was way in over my head. I didn't feel like I had big enough ears or big enough arms to do what the Lord wanted. And I said, Lord, you got to slow this down, because I said, I can't do this. And, And so, at any rate, we found a happy place, I guess. And, but yeah, I actually said, Lord, quit giving me so much money. Yeah, it was just, which sounds crazy, right? Anybody that has a business and wants to succeed, that's what you want. And yeah.
What's so fascinating about that is at that low point in your life when you felt like you had everything you could ever ask for.
Yeah.
Money, stuff, relationships, whatever it is that you had, you realized, that wasn't enough. You still didn't want to live. And here you are where the Lord is blessing you and you're going, no more.
Good point. Yeah.
the ways that the Lord works is so, counterintuitive. I mean, it's obviously His presence. It's His work to bring a situation full circle and say, I don't want no more. I have you, Lord, and all that I have to manage now is just a little bit overwhelming. And it's not like you're saying more, 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 because you came to a place in your life where more wasn't enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't even enough to want to continue to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now the purpose that you have in life is now living for the glory of God. And you're like, I don't,
Well, I think in there too, as you're saying that, I realize, at some point, I think the process of learning to obey, we need to hear. To hear, we need to be convicted. And so we need to hear, and there's this, okay, I hear you. Okay, I want to be obedient, but I'm not sure how to do that. And so, you need to realize that maybe we at different times we're able to fulfill this, but not that. And that's probably what I think I was maybe experiencing. Again, I heard God, and yet I was overwhelmed with the success that was coming, and subsequently the ministry. And so in some ways I'm feeling a little awkward that I might have said, okay, enough missions, enough ministry, but the Lord fixes it, fills in the blanks. He's God, right? So he gets it all sorted out.
Well, what's fascinating to me is that, or rather the curiosity peaks for me is when the Lord's asking for 50% of, whatever comes your way through the business and whatnot, where's that directed toward? Did the Lord shape your heart for a certain kind of
great question.
Contributions to something specific, or
for the most part? And I meant to actually look up these stats so I could be prepared to share them today, but I've heard something, in fact, you can probably speak better to this, but of every dollar that is given towards ministry / missions, I believe it's less than 1% that actually goes to the 1040 window. So the 1040 window is where the preponderance of people who don't know and will never hear of Jesus live and exist. And yet the funds that go to support ministry there is, we have lots of big fancy churches. We have great sound systems, and we have lots of great stuff. And I like all of it. And yet I look at, people around the globe who, it's not that they don't have this or that, but they don't have Jesus. They don't have a Bible. They don't have anybody telling them about Christ. So God convicted me early, and I'm sure part of the reason he took me to Africa and introduced himself in Africa is because and the first thing we did was visit a refugee camp. And refugee camps are not a nice place. There's very few men. It's orphans and women. And that's it, because the men are dead. Half the kids are dead, and the women are dead. And so, and in fact, the day that we got to this refugee camp, we weren't going to be allowed to go in because the camp had been shelled the day before. So this is a refugee camp. It's got women and kids in it. And Renamo was killing the refugees. There's no military. It's just people living in tents.
This is in Kenya?
Yeah. And so they weren't going to let us in to visit the refugees. And then they discovered that we were with World Vision. And so they said, well, if we will go in and not hold anybody liable if we get killed, then we could go into the camp. And so they let us into the camp without understanding. But again, it's just, people just trying to live, and it wouldn't be any different than what we're seeing today in Ukraine or you name it, Russia. I mean, it's all over, right? Wherever there's war, and people just trying to survive, and yet the enemy, whoever that is, I mean, ultimately, I believe it's the devil, is still wanting to bring destruction and devastation. And so I believe that's why God took me to, the 1040 window, introduced himself there, and then has given me a passion. So the vast preponderance of my giving has been for the 1040, which is, Africa, Asia, South America, Vietnam, all over Asia, a lot of stuff in China, a lot of stuff in India. And because we have so many great organizations here locally, I definitely enjoy supporting a variety of different ministries, here in Medford. We have some great organizations run by some great people. In fact, I almost feel bad by not doing more in supporting them, but I believe that what I'm doing is what God has called me to do, and helping the 1040 window.
And so that really started with World Vision back then.
Yeah.
And then
those 10 kids I sponsored.
And the 10 kids.
The 10 kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where that first engagement became. Yeah.
That's amazing, because I think about, how much your involvement over the years that I'm familiar with, has went from that experience with World Vision and your time with them, and then, meeting other people and getting involved with other organizations. And I don't know how much we can talk about certain things for people's safety and whatnot, but just how that's evolved into other organizations and where they're doing ministry and work.
Yeah.
But it, so was it really from World Vision you connecting with other ministries that are doing ministry overseas that you began to just the Lord
and
led you through that?
You meet one person, and then you meet somebody else, and then you meet somebody else, and and as I say it, you meet somebody, God brings somebody. I mean, I say that. I mean, God is just your dad and I. Your dad and I are very actively involved in Africa together, of all things. I mean, I can't even believe. I have to laugh that I'm back in Africa with your dad, building YWAM facilities in now what may be a second country that we're going to conceivably undertake in Liberia. And so it's just mind-boggling. But again, I have no clue what God's going to do next. But God, moved in your dad, and then your dad got a hold of me, and then God kind of, had me fall in love with the same things your dad was fallen in love with. So it's pretty crazy. I mean, now we see what's going on, and we see buildings that are up, and I look at the expense, quite honestly, it's like, it's so minimal. I can't believe how much you can do in a place like Africa for comparatively, a night out almost. I mean, it's just insane. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I've had the privilege of meeting people that you've worked with and getting to hear stories and been more exposed to what's going on around the world for the glory of God, and the gospel spreading. And that has been a privilege for me, just by simply, the Lord introducing us, me getting to connect and learn more about all these things that, I had some familiarity, but it's not as much as it is now. It is exciting to see, the work that the Lord is doing other places. And I imagine a lot of the joy in your life comes from not necessarily receiving, but giving.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. There's no comparison. Once you've had that privilege of, and I think we all like to get, we all like to have. And I've had and given and done, or been given lots. And it's like, I'm in an age where it's like, whatever. And now the joy, there's much more purpose in being a part of giving, and then seeing the fruit of something, in Africa or in Mexico or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, right now, over the years, God has connected me with. In fact, I think today I had conversations going in 3 different countries simultaneously. How does this kid, hitchhiking to work at 15, find himself in ministry, or finding being interviewed
Mm-hmm.
because, and you realize it's all because of what God has done, and you realize it's not you at all. It's only you, in the sense of, yes, Lord, we say yes or we don't, and it's as simple as that. We say yes or we don't. And if we don't, we miss out. And if we do, we're blessed. And we get to be a blessing, which really must be the ultimate blessing, is being a blessing at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
How cool is that? Like, wow.
So what are a few of like your most, in kind of coming to a close here, what are a few of your most memorable experiences traveling? Because I know you've been to quite a few places. Do you have any stories or just memories that poke out to you?
Well, one that jumps out is we were in, what country were we in? They'll come to me. Anyway, we were in a country, and we had occasion to visit a little community hospital. And we're walking through this little hospital. It has no running water. So if you have you're in a hospital, kind of water and sanitation is kind of like a key thing, right? So there's no water. There's no running water. Now, they did have access to water because another group had drilled a well outside. So if you wanted water, you went out and they had a steel bucket, and you took a bucket out and you pumped some water into the bucket, and then you took it in the hospital. So you look in these buckets around the hospital, and they're just bloody, icky mess, and with disease, I can't even imagine, right? And I remember, again, walking through this hospital thinking, and I remember they had these mattresses that were maybe 2-3 inches, kind of like what I remember in the military. And it's a thin mattress on a spring, metal cot. And of course, there's no sheets, just this mattress, and it's got blood and pus, and these things are nasty. And I remember people laying on these mattresses, and they got bandages on them, whatever. And I'm thinking, you'd be better off just going home and dying. You're probably getting more infection being in this hospital than you would at home. And so there was another couple on this group, and I thought, this isn't okay. And so I went to this other couple, and they were, and I said, would you guys be willing to go in and we'll put water in this hospital? And they said, absolutely. And so we had the privilege, and I don't remember all of it, but we ended up, because there was a well, and it was a good well, I think it was a 70,000 gallon tank that was up maybe 25, 30 feet. And so and the hospital had been built. And so it had stainless steel, but there was no running water. But now, because of the gravity fed 70,000 gallon, and so that pump would run, keep that tank full. And then in the day, gravity would feed, and they had running water in that hospital. So sometime, I don't know, a year or two, whatever it was, we got invited to go back. And I was to go to a ribbon cutting ceremony. And it was cool because they closed the school. The kids were out in school. They had a parade going down the street. The military was there. And so we went to this hospital, and they had I don't remember. They had a big ribbon around this water tower. Now, the other family that had participated didn't get to go, but my wife and son got to go. And I think it was just my son and I went up in the tower. And I think the ribbon was down below. But at any rate, we got to go and be a part of doing a ribbon cutting for this little hospital out in Podunk, Africa. I'm still not sure what country it was. Doesn't matter. But that was really profound. And again, I don't know that I will ever encounter again school being closed, the military out, parades in the street. But you realize, I remember again looking at those people in the hospital, really truly thinking, you'd be better off going home and dying because you're going to get sicker in this place that's supposed to be a place of healing. You know, it's just so nasty. And so, I mean, the people, I mean, in a sense, they saw, you know, the people in the community saw the same thing, and now there was running water. And I don't know what's in that hospital since then, but, you know, getting running water in there was certainly a significant, you know, next step for that community. So it was really profound.
My.
Yeah. I kind of get overwhelmed because, you know, even last night, just Cowboy, which is the young man that your dad embraced about 15 years ago now, and who has been at YWAM for 20 years up until just recently. He's got a wife, Victoria, and 3 kids. And, you know, I got pictures yesterday. Cowboy was in Liberia preaching. He'd been invited to go and preach to some orphans in Liberia, and his wife, Victoria, had been left in charge. In the last pictures I had received, these young orphan boys are digging these trenches, which was the foundation for these 3 duplexes that are being built. And all I remember is, I guess this was just around Christmas time, and trying to come up with a little bit of a budget and talking about how many bags of concrete you needed to, you know, sand, and what would make the best block, because they were going to make their best block. And so I just see these young boys digging trenches with shovels, and the next thing I see 3 buildings with roofs on them. That you know, that dump truck full of sand is now block, and these 3 duplexes are built. And I'm thinking, this was a couple of weeks ago. And then the comment is Victoria, you know, Cowboy's wife, had been overseeing this project, and she'd found the people to do it at a very fair price. And so now, again, you know, I just write a check. Your dad kind of runs, you know, he does the blocking and make sure Cowboy can make the pass. And lo and behold, now we've discovered that his wife, Victoria, she is she's a powerhouse. She is in fact, I was discovered to have cancer a few months ago. And so your dad had told Cowboy that I had cancer. And so Cowboy and Victoria said, okay, well, we want to pray for Wayne. And so, we were going to have company over, including your dad and his wife, Paisha, and then a friend of mine, Carol. And Cowboy and Victoria wanted us to call them. And Cowboy had said, we want you to anoint Papa Wayne with oil. And don't be liberal, you know, like drench him. You know? And they said, before you do it, though, call us. And so it was 3:30 in the morning, Nigeria time. And Cowboy and Victoria and their littlest boy get up out of it. You can tell they've been sound asleep. When I heard Cowboy and Victoria pray for me, it was one of those times, Rush, where I don't remember the last time I felt the move and the presence of the Holy Spirit like I did that evening. And And I realized that who we were partnering, we being your dad and I particularly, who we were partnering with in Africa, this was not just Cowboy, but a husband and wife, and I'm going to presume the kids in time, is truly a family, a couple who are uniquely gifted by God to work and do incredible things in Africa. And there's already been an invitation to go beyond Nigeria, and who knows where it'll go, but they have moved out of the facility there in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, and they are living in a new facility, which is going to be AMT, Adopt Me Too. Yeah, so AMT Sports Academy, which will also be a part of YWAM, and they're focusing on orphans and providing a discipleship platform founded in football, soccer, which is, it's everywhere around most of the world, and has real potential. And so he's already got invitations to go and start something similar in Liberia. I don't know what'll happen there, but, he just got back a few days ago. So we're just seeing God just, again, just say yes, and he'll, just take it. So I don't know where it's going to go, but have every reason to believe that it's going to be good. I'm going to be meeting with this guy, Paul Wozniak, with the National Christian Foundation. They have helped place over $28 billion. So they connect people who have resources, who want to see all or a part of those resources be used by the kingdom. And NCF has helped place over $28 billion into the hands of ministry and missions. Wow. And so this guy is going to come up and spend a weekend with me and my family in a couple of weeks. And we're going to be hosting folks from Mission India and folks from Reach a Village and some local ministries. And so, I mean, just so many wonderful things going on. I can just hardly comprehend what God is doing. And, I have no idea what he has in store for tomorrow. I just know that I'm confident that he's the one who owns all of the tomorrows forever and ever. And I'm, you and I are in his hands, right? Good stuff.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Again, rubbing shoulders with a lot of people that over the years that you have rubbed shoulders with and partnered with, and all kinds of different places around the world, and just hearing the testimonies and the stories of lives changed, not just changed in the physical world now, but for eternity.
Yeah.
And that's really
the one that really matters.
What it boils down to.
Yeah.
But those other things are means by which, those things take place, and very important and very powerful. And I just kind of reeling it back a little bit.
Yeah.
When you came up to Oregon, you had a lot of there was it was exciting because you had this place, this beautiful place that the Lord has allowed you to be at, up until this point. But there were some pretty big transitions in life at that point. And when you came to Oregon, what were some of the major things that happened in your life in terms of maybe some challenges that you went through, but also how the Lord has used that to shape you into who you are today? Getting a little more personal with some things. Yeah.
Yeah. As so often happens, I think in relations, there's the season when, your love will never die. You just have a lot of fun together. Life is full of excitement and wonder. And by the time my wife and I started moving north, in hindsight, I think our marriage was done. Neither one of us, I don't think, was ready. Maybe she was, I don't know, but I don't think either one of us was ready to acknowledge that. So on the one hand, I'd been self-employed for 40, 50 years, whatever it was, and was free and had, the business was sold for a reasonably significant amount of money. And so there was money. There was the joy, the excitement of thinking that money was going to go into ministry. And I also had some cash and thought, well, I want to invest. I figure I've still got some years in me. I had done pretty well in real estate in California. Thought it would be prudent to come to Oregon and continue to invest in real estate for the purposes of income generation. And then at some point in time, you can, in fact, over the last couple of years, I've managed to give away a couple of houses, which have been used for ministry. But at any rate, so I started buying real estate, and at the same time, thought I would buy my wife and I would be happy in like a 2,400, 2,200 foot house on a couple of acres. And so I looked at a couple of properties, put offers in, and but at the same time I was buying investment property, and had bought, I think, like 2 fourplexes and a couple of homes, and it was easier to find investment real estate than it was to find something that I thought would make us happy. So I had a friend who was working for a guy on the Rogue River. And he called me one day and he said, I was in the Bay Area, and he said, Wayne, the guy that owns like 5 pieces of property, 3 of them there on the Rogue River, then owned a couple 100-acre ranch up near where I live now. At any rate, all of this property was going up for sale. And I said, I'm literally stepping into my motorhome to drive up there right this minute. And so I said, I'll be there in about 7 hours, whatever. And so I drove up and visited, put an offer on, I think, 1, maybe 2 of the other properties. I didn't go. And then there was this one 26-acre. And I thought, 26 acres on Rattlesnake Rapids in the Rogue Valley for what seemed to me, a minimal amount of money as California numbers went. I thought, well, gosh, this is like winning the lotto to me. And so I bought that property with the idea that I'd build a nice, comfortable home for the family. Built, a house that was actually 2 houses in one. There was a game room. There was other master bedrooms. There was a bunk room. There was ping pong table, pool table, a couple of ATVs, a couple of side-by-sides. I mean, had jet skis, had all the toys, thinking, well, all the grandkids, and we'd all end up in this big house on the river and kind of live happily ever after. Well, little by little, things with my wife just continued to spiral out of control. And we didn't sleep, and we slept in the house, but slept at opposite ends of the house. And we took turns, trading the opposite ends of the house. And then eventually she said, it's time. And so she left. And yeah. And so, again, I was faced with, okay, got a big house on the river and it's empty. And my Diane was an amazing grandma, and grandkids, rightly so, loved grandma, and grandma loved grandkids, and she would give and do anything for them, which Papa did not agree with. I would not do most any of the things that she wanted to do. And so it quickly became, I think, in hindsight, I kind of feel like, well, the family chose grandma in part because grandma could and would do things and I was broken too. I didn't know how to be a grandpa. And so little by little, at any rate, the family didn't come visit with me, even though my daughter lived around the corner. I'd be lucky if I heard from her once a month. The grandkids actually stopped talking to me, stopped acknowledging phone calls, and basically wrote me off. And so I was thinking, here I was doing God's will and God's work, and yet my family has decided they want nothing to do with me. And that's been a really, really, really hard time. And yeah, we're still navigating our way out of it. And interestingly enough, Rush, and I don't know that you're even aware of this, it wasn't until I fully acknowledged that I couldn't be happy, I couldn't be fulfilled without my family being a part of it. I didn't realize how much I loved and needed my kids and my grandkids. And, I kind of thought, well, they're living their own lives. They're going in their own direction, and, well, that's fine. But over a time, I became more and more and more heartbroken again. And God was working, and I could see that. And when I was told that I had cancer, interesting bringing this come full circle. Yeah. When I was told that I had cancer, I realized, I was like, okay, I'm going to go home and it's okay. I'm so heartbroken. I'm ready to go. And I'm confident. I know I'm going to go and be with God, and that's good. And I'm confident in who I have, not saying I'm perfect by any stretch. However, I am not the man I once was. I do, in fact, love and live for God. And I'm a man whose family doesn't want him. And that hurt a lot. And I didn't realize, I think, I'd learned to just, and look away. And then I realized, and a couple of weeks ago, my grandson put his arms around me and he said, "Papo, it's so nice to have my grandpa back again." He and I both just cried. And I didn't realize how much I needed my grandkids, but how much my grandkids needed me. I had no idea. Again, I was selfish. I was feeling my pain, but was totally insensitive to they needed a grandpa too. And so even now, again, the reality of that is rather sobering. Again, even at 70, almost 77 years old, it's amazing how there's always lessons to learn. Even when you think you kind of got it together, you got, oh no, Wayne. God has much to teach you. And if we are willing to say, yes, Lord, and willing to be vulnerable and willing to reveal our faults and to acknowledge our faults, God's always willing to show more. But in the process of revealing them, he also brings healing. And to have my grandson he said it a few times now. He says, Oh, he said, it's so good to have my grandpa back. And I'm still, as I say those words, because my grandson came over. He hadn't spoken to me in 5 years.
Mhm.
He was mad at me. And so finally, somehow or other, I guess it was the cancer. That's right. We coined cancer as the answer, because cancer is so often, the last word in many relationships is cancer kills regularly. And so because the family started hearing I had cancer, people realized, it's interesting as I say this, who has responded and who has not responded, because some of the family has not responded. Some of the family has responded. And I guess the family that I would consider loves me has responded. And for them that I don't think do, they have not. And so little by little, though, I'm seeing this opportunity to reconnect with family and realize how important it is. And at the end of the day, that without family, I was still very much incomplete, totally incomplete. Even with, an amazing relationship with God, fully sold out to God, at least as much as I can tell at this point. But I had no idea how heartbroken, I've been for a number of years. And, yeah. No. Yeah. 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 It's the Lord.
It's interesting to hear you. I've heard we've had conversations about these kinds of things over the years, and some of the trials of, brokenness and hardships in life. And it is so amazing to see. I've watched you from an outside perspective, and how the Lord has, and you with me as well, how the Lord has refined you, and how he has, um um I'm so grateful for you and your testimony and your honesty, and seeing the hand of the Lord, and then seeing how, in these days that you're going through right now, how the Lord has brought reconnection to family. And it's such a powerful line that you say, that I feel incomplete without family.
Yeah.
And just the importance, and I think about that in my own life. I think about the reality that I really, it's like at the end, toward the end of your life, when you feel like the days are winding down, I feel like that challenges, to consider what really matters, in life. And I think about that now, being 40 years old with my son, and I don't know. I just, it's neat to see how, you're being able to connect with your grandson and your daughter and your son, and have conversations that,
Marvelous.
And just that reality of being kind of isolated in a way. But then when there's communication and honesty, when there's that connection again, it kind of brings about a renewed relationship.
Yeah.
When there's silence, there's so much speculation. There's so much assumption about how another person feels.
Yes.
And yet at the same time, there's a heart that yearns for that connection, but it's the lack of communication and honesty that allows for a reconnection. And it harkens back for me to the story of the psychologist. So don't pray. So don't be who you aren't, but in a way it harkens back to that. But then there's that idea that there has to be real honesty, and vulnerability, but there has to be communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this trial that you're going through right now has really drawn in things back to being able to communicate and begin that process of a relationship.
what's so profound.
I don't know. I'm just.
Well, as you're as you're saying it, my daughter Lisa and I had a conversation just before I came over here, and we've got this event happening at the house in a couple of weeks, and as people have heard about the event and the timing, more and more people have said, "Oh, that sounds like a good thing," and so I said, "Well, you ought to come." And so I'm running out of bedrooms. I'm running out of beds, to the point where I was actually thinking, well, I could give up my bed. And I'm thinking, I don't know where I'll sleep, but I'll find it. I'll give up my bed if that's what is needed, And so then I thought, well, okay, I can. And then I thought, well, my son could go stay with his sister. Be a great opportunity for them, because he worked for Schwab, and she wanted to talk about, moving some money to Schwab maybe, and investing and that sort of thing. And I don't know that they've ever had a weekend together. And I really like her new husband. It would give Michael and Tony. So I was talking to Lisa earlier today, and I had mentioned that to her. And it's so interesting what you're saying about communication. She had seen that as me pushing Michael off, and me saying Michael as second fiddle. And so I would push Michael to her house, invite my friends to stay at my house, and Michael could go stay with his sister. And so Lisa, thank God she told me that. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I said, Lisa, it's just the opposite. I said, once I realized this was an opportunity for the two of you to be together, it was like, oh, this is wonderful. And I wouldn't have thought of that if we didn't have a full house. I wouldn't have thought of Michael going and staying with his sister. And so to me, it was a revelation. And to her, it was kind of a curse. But unless communication occurred. And so thank God she told me.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I told her, I said, oh, honey. And I told her what my perspective was. I could just hear the transformation in her voice. And she said, she realized that, no, I actually saw it as something good, and not that Michael was being shuffled off to the back room sort of thing. It wasn't that at all. It was an opportunity. And to me, it was like, well, and then as I'm saying that, Rush, I don't know where Lisa walks with God, but I thought, oh, okay. I see this as an opportunity. I see this as the hand of God filling the house and providing an opportunity for Michael and Lisa with Tony, her husband, to connect for the weekend. Cool. How cool is that? And the reality is sometime in the future, I am leaving, right? I'm going home. And I don't know what that looks like, but it would give them another opportunity. And I don't know that they've ever had a weekend together. So I'm thinking this is cool. But she's thinking of this as something negative. So without the opportunity to talk, I don't know that, if we're just left in that void, she was thinking I was casting Michael aside. I'm seeing that Michael's being blessed. I'm seeing that Michael and Lisa are being blessed, and Tony is being blessed. Without the conversation, nothing. With the conversation, oh, I see that. And Lisa all of a sudden is excited about the possibility. And she said, well, I'll talk to Michael. I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, I can still go find a bed. I'll go, whatever. Somebody can have my bed if they need, if we need to have somebody sleep in my room that doesn't. That would be fine. But at any rate, it's just again, that element of conversation can be just, things unsaid, good or bad, the good things that are left unsaid, the bad things that are left unsaid. And until there is truly real understanding and real and talking it through till there's understanding, we live at the mercy of the devil. And he is always going to be putting stuff in our conversation. He's always going to be planting junk at our mind. And boy, for me, that junk gets in my brain, and that stuff was quick to sprout seeds and roots. And it's the stuff in my brain I do not need or want. And the truth is always what sets us free. So,
Amen. Amen. Yeah, it's so powerful. It's a two-parter for me. I feel like the communication and the honesty in the communication, and then the way you communicate that honesty so people can hear, but then also the listening ear, to really hear, the heart behind what somebody else is saying. Like we all know that we got to communicate, but it's so easy to be, just to forget that and not practice that well.
Right.
I do all the time, and it's like I think, I've had people tell me, in fact, in the last year or so, like I thought like I communicated fairly well, and it's like I don't understand what you're saying. I'm like, oh. And it's and I think in part because I think I hear what's going on and saying, and yet I am responding, but I'm not responding to the deeper heart of the matter. I'm not listening for the deeper heart of the matter, and so it just harkens back to like that situation. The ability, you see something one way, someone else sees something the other way. And until there's like a real honest, hey, here's how I really feel about this.
Right.
Is this what you're intending? You would end up maybe in prison for another year, and not be able to connect with those you deeply love.
Yeah. Amen.
And I think,
Amen.
difficulties in life put all that into perspective. Now, I want to correct this right now because I don't know what tomorrow holds. As opposed to, I'll put it off because I'm upset.
Well, I definitely hear the term reflective listening bouncing across the back of my head. And where, I think I understand you, and this is what I'm hearing. And then so often, that's not what I said. It's like, really? That's what you heard? Yeah. And so communication's a tricky thing. And sometimes we're afraid if we say the truth, we're going to hurt somebody's feeling. But by not speaking the truth, we're almost guaranteed to, because we will think something about the situation that's wrong. We will condemn the other person, and the other person will probably do the same thing. We'll all lose, right? By not being honest. And so we need to do it with prayer and, honesty. And honesty is also, how do I say this in such a way that I can acknowledge the situation, but do it with the interest of encouraging the other person. Now, the immediate comment may or may not, but at the end of the conversation, they will be uplifted because they will have a better understanding. And the understanding may be that, we just, I don't get it, but I think it's okay. A friend and I had to do that. We were in the book of Revelation the other day, and we had to say, I don't get it. So we went to Matthew. It's okay.
Just move somewhere else.
We'll go someplace else. We'll come back to Revelation another time. It's sense. We meet tonight. Yeah.
I love your your flexibility with that. Let's just go over here. Like, we don't have to stay here. If something's just not clicking, we can move this way. Yeah, that's that's good. That's a good thing, because I tend to get stuck on something and I can't move off. We got to figure it
the way we are. Yeah.
But
actually, it was one of the other guys who suggested that we move, and he's the smart one in the group. He's the one, I think, who got Revelation the best. And the other guy and I were like, eh. And he's saying, why don't we go someplace else? And we both said, okay.
We're ready for that.
Yeah, we're all, and he said, yeah, I think it's a good idea. It was the smart thing to do.
That's good.
The smart thing. We may go back to Revelation another time. Yeah.
Well, I have a few closing questions for you. And thank you for sharing that and being honest about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know how deeply you love your family, and And it's just cool to see some of the things that are happening now. And so I wanted to ask something. A couple serious, well, I mean, depends on, I guess, where you want to take it. And then just a silly question, and then we'll close it up. But one of my questions that I ask folks, I'm going to ask you both of them. I sometimes only ask one. But the first one is, if you knew it was your last day, on Earth, what would you do, and who would you spend it with?
You can ask me the other one now as well?
Just that one.
Just one at a time.
One at a time.
All right. This is not the answer to your question. However, it's a reflection upon the question. So there have been, including you and then some new friends, have suggested that I record my testimony. And that was both for people who didn't know me, but also for my family who may not know me or doesn't know certain aspects of me. And at the end of the day, I think with regards to my family, yeah, I've done a lot of stupid, I've done a lot of selfish, really crappy things in my life. I'm so ashamed, brutally ashamed of some of my past. And I am not that man anymore. And I have wanted my kids, my family, my friends, but mostly my family, to have an opportunity to meet me kind of on the other side of having known me as that selfish, guy that only thought of himself all the time. And it's a very distinct possibility that you, through this, are helping to that. I think, again, I was 40 when I got saved, 77 in another week. A lot has transpired, including the kids growing up, a lot of life and divorce for me, divorce for some of them. I mean, life goes on. I mean, the road rage goes on, the horrible accidents where there's bodies strewn all over the highway. Those have gone on. I mean, life has gone on, and the pain and for the family has gone on in the world. And at the same time, God has been doing some really good things. And I can't say I'm proud of it, but I am very thankful that he gave the presence of mind to say yes. And I want my family to know that Papo did aspire to say yes to God, the God of the universe, and did so with the belief and faith that in God's timing, God would use the yes, whatever it might have been, he would use that yes for the best of the family and the best of the world around us as we were able to touch and influence. So the one thing I wanted to do is be able to tell my family how much I love them. I desperately love them. And I want them to know me. And it's not to know me. It's really to know the God I serve and love. That's what it's about. It ain't about me. It's about God. It's the one who promised me to, say, yes, Lord, because it's what makes the world work. And we know the world ain't working very well. So I guess that would, it's so weird that, I would think to answer it in this setting by using this setting. So I don't know. I don't know how God is orchestrating that. See your tears as well. Oh my.
Well, I've got to walk with you through some of the heartache of all of it. And I really, I feel your pain, and yet
Yeah.
your desire to
Yeah.
connect,
Yeah.
with those you love, and yet your desire to honor and serve the God who saved you.
Above even the family,
The
God has got to be. There can't be anything. There cannot be anything above God. And if God is at the top, all those other places will fill in the way they're supposed to and where they're supposed to. And the love for family will be what it's meant to be, not something it's not meant to be. And family can, I think many families are askew because, the kids or whatever are given something, a position, a wife, a spouse, whatever, job, money, sex, drugs, alcohol. We can put other things in that place of God. And if God isn't at the top, nothing else works. An upside down foundation with God at the top.
Mm.
Without that, but we learn that, right, step by step. We learn that by stepping here. We step on a nail, we step in dog poo, whatever. We go through those mistakes of life. We get, burned elbows, but little by little, and we hurt people around us. But little by little, God is faithful to reveal who He is and what His plan and what His will is for His children. And we have the privilege of knowing that we are His children. Pretty profound.
All praise the Lord.
All praise the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And now on the other front, if you had the whole world's attention for 10 minutes, what comes to mind of what you would say?
The gospel. The gospel. Yeah. And I'm not good at telling or sharing the gospel. In fact, I was thinking the last couple of days, I think again, because I have no sense if I've got 10 years or 10 minutes. But I do know that I have stage 4 bone cancer. And that cancer is a byproduct of having had lung cancer. And that's a bad combination. I mean, lung cancer that is metastasized into bone cancer is not good. I mean, it's just not good. And people have opened some doors to some research centers and some places that I can possibly go. And I'm not trying to paint a down picture other than just reality. But I have no idea what God has. I mean, there are people that say, Wayne, God's got some things for you left to do. And this may be just simply another stepping stone, in that direction. But I think I was thinking just the other day that if there's anything I want to share or would want to be proficient at sharing, it is the gospel of hope. In fact, as I was coming here, I was listening to an advertisement by, I think it was 71.5. And there was a young lady, I guess they were at a weekend or something. And there was another young lady that had shown up at this weekend. And she didn't look like she had any friends. And so this girl had gone over and introduced herself. And by the time the weekend was over, the young lady who initiated connection, who had met with this gal who had never been there before, this young lady who had never been there before ended up giving her life to Christ. And they'd become friends and realizing there is nothing on God's green earth that is greater than knowing that we are children of God. We are of the very the God who spoke the universe, all the stars, the grains of sand, the hairs on my head, not so many, but who spoke and who knows our name, knows us from before the beginning of time to the end of time, lives past, present, and future. We have no inclination of how vast this God is, and yet he looks at you and I as his kiddos. And as such, there's nothing he wouldn't ask of us, just as he asked of Jesus. But there's also nothing that he wouldn't do for us or give us, including sacrificing his son, Jesus. That's so profound. But without that, we're all just empty bags of salt. We're just going to wither away, like all those carcasses did in Africa during that famine. Yeah.
Wow.
Got to be God's word. The power of God's word to change lives there's nothing else like it. Nothing else like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen to that. Amen to the need for the gospel to be shared. And, because once we pass from this life, that's it. I mean, if there's no more chance to respond to
there's nothing we're going to leave.
The work of Christ.
You're going to leave a nice house, but, in another few years, it'll crumble down again, right? It'll just will. It just, it's a nice studio. It's great. Nice equipment. Great. But so what? Yeah. But the word of God will go on and change lives. And who knows what God will even do with some of this conversation. We don't know.
We don't know. But, what's fascinating about that when you say, the equipment in the room, so what? It's all going to crumble down. It's just interesting because it brings me back to that experience right before you came to Christ where you realized that so what? I have all the stuff I could ever dream. Yeah, so what? Life is dark and despairing, and it's like, and it's through that experience that your desires were met by kind of your standard. You could have anything you want, right? Your dad said to you at one point in time, you just have to work for it, and you were able to achieve that and have quite an abundance, and yet you were able to see that even after all that, what really actually matters is not all the things that you can acquire or all the goals that you can achieve or the status that you have. It really boils down to that stuff is meaningless. Yeah. It's Jesus Christ that gives purpose and meaning and the hope in a world where there's a lot of hopelessness.
Yeah.
And that's where, life begins to, literally happen, right? When we come to Christ and we're born again, we're made new, we have new heart, new desires, and yet we still live in the flesh and we war against the matters of the flesh and the relationship with other sinners saved by grace, and just, it's just the process. I had a man tell me recently, he said to me, he was telling me about how his grandfathers were hugely influenced in his life. They were a big influence in his life. And one of his grandfathers had started the largest missionary school, if I think I'm saying this right, in Ecuador.
Wow.
And I believe it still is the largest. And, I think his grandfather told him that it wasn't so much about what he accomplished there, but it was about who he became while he was there. It wasn't so much about all the achievements, all the accolades of what he achieved. It was about the Lord placing him in the best place he could be to grow most like Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And that is the conclusion by the grace of God that we come to, is that all the trials and all the pain and all the difficulty, all the sufferings that we experience in this first world country kind of things, all the things that we endure totally have meaning. God uses it to shape us into the image of His Son. And though there's pain, though there's sorrow, God uses it for good. And my prayer is that, our conversation here and all the things that I have observed in your life and seen how God has, used your life for His glory is unquestionable.
Yeah.
And
it feels unquestionable. One of the things that blows me away is that is unquestionably God. It is unquestionably God that's at work. It is unquestionably God that moves and directs. And that's the piece that just brings utter joy, because it's unquestionably God.
Yeah.
The God, right? It's God. It's not Wayne. It's not Rush Jr. No, it's God in you.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I can't, right? You can't even really put that word.
Yeah.
But we know what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
And apart from experiencing it, and apart from knowing God in that capacity, it's just, what are you guys talking about? That's stupid.
It's meaningless. Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, go
some
talk
ways.
out.
If it weren't true,
Yeah,
it would be ludicrous.
Yeah. Well, it's just amazing because your life, up until you were 38 or 39 or whatever, you had trials, no doubt, but you had no hope.
Yeah, and no hope.
The second half of your life, you had trials, but you had hope.
That's a great point. Yeah. And the trials are what even led to the hope, right? They opened the door. They opened the door that God could walk through. He says, I think I can get your attention now.
It's I mean, it's just profound.
Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds.
It's just profound because I think that, I think that the just looking at, and I don't know, there's just so many things after all the conversations we've sat in chairs at your house and other places and had all kinds of conversations. I actually had an experience one time where I just thought of this. This is off the cuff, random, but I will never forget. One time we were in Florida. Remember in Daytona? You and I we went to go with Bob with the Reach a Village team. We went down to Daytona.
Okay.
And we were with a man who was a doctor. I can't remember his name.
Oh, okay. Yeah, keep going.
Okay. I can't remember his name, which didn't help.
Sure.
But
Bob would know.
Bob would know. But I remember one thing, because Wayne and I, for you out there who are still listening with us here, we've had a few silly incidents, and how we even met and connected. Yeah. And it's so funny because I remember one time I don't know why I thought of this. I remember one time we were staying in the same hotel room, and you are an epic snorer, or you have been. And I have never slept in a room with somebody. I mean, my dad snores. He's got a snorer on him for sure. But this man can snore like there is no tomorrow. And I'll never forget, I was sleeping in there, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to." I was trying to get to sleep, and I could not get to sleep. It's like, hurry. And I was laying there looking at the ceiling like, there is no way I'm going to sleep this night. And I got up for my sanity. I got up and I went and worked out at the gym at like 4 a.m. in the morning. And I was lifting some heavy weights.
Yeah, trying to get the steam off here. Right? I need some sleep.
I'll never forget that. While that was a trial in the moment, it's a precious memory now. That brings a lot of laughter.
I don't recall any of that. I was asleep, I guess.
I don't think you ever slept so well in your life. It was funny.
Yes.
That was the same trip that when we were on the airplane that a lady had driven, or she was sleeping next to me on the airplane, and yeah, she did a little like headrest on me, almost. Like, well, here we go,
Was she cute?
It was, she seemed like a nice lady.
Okay.
Well,
Well said. Yeah, it's good.
but anyways, I'm so grateful, Wayne, to have you on here today, and maybe we'll have you back
Yeah,
again.
thank you.
Thank you for coming on and sharing and being honest and with life and how the Lord has worked in your life and the ups and downs and where you're at today and
yours.
and yeah, no doubt.
And yours.
But in closing, I wanted to ask you one question that I don't know if I actually know the answer. I think I do, but this is kind of a silly off the cuff thing. What is your favorite dish to eat?
What is my favorite dish to eat?
If you could have a full meal before you,
Full meal.
what would be your drink and your main dish, entree dish, and dessert?
Oh my. I would probably say well-cooked broccoli. I would say well-cooked broccoli.
Mm-hmm.
I would say a well-cooked baked potato. And I would say a really nice quality steak. Yeah, I would say a steak, potato, and broccoli. I like broccoli when it's, lots of butter probably. Yeah, good steak and potato.
And a glass of milk?
No, I drink water now.
Okay.
I haven't had milk in months.
Wow.
Months and
That's
months.
a big change.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and then a bowl of ice cream.
So we have moved on to, we have discovered just recently, because they had it on sale, is chocolate peppermint with a scoop of chunky peanut butter in the ice cream.
Ooh.
Oh my. That's a really nice combination. Yeah. Chunky peanut butter and chocolate peppermint ice cream, little chunks of peppermint.
Ooh.
It's really tasty.
That's
a nice combination.
That sounds good.
And then some Love by Dusty. Gotta have Dusty in that equation.
Yeah, Dusty's the dog, by the way. Yeah.
Dusty Rose. Yeah.
Well, in closing up here, do you have any? By the way, now I want to go eat some chunky peppermint ice cream and some chunky peanut butter. That sounds delightful. Yeah. I mean, not that I could use any right now, but it certainly sounds delightful.
So I could.
Okay. Well, I might be following you home.
That'll work.
But anyways, thank you again for coming on here, Wayne.
My pleasure.
And just any closing thoughts, any last minute, just promptings or anything you'd like to say in closing, and then I'll close us out.
Yeah. If anyone listening to this or maybe being referred back to it is even just wondering who this God is, who this Jesus is, in this crazy world, can there really be a God? We see so much evil. We see so much confusion. Is there hope? Is there really hope? Is there hope for me? Yeah. I was addicted to drugs. I was addicted to sex. I was addicted to making money. I had some serious issues, and I was addicted to giving myself whatever I thought would make me happy. And I met Jesus, and I don't know how, I still to this day, I mean, I know what he did. I don't know how he got me to Africa. I mean, I can give you the detail. I've shared that. But how it all happened apart from him, it didn't. It happened because of him. So I guess I would just want to say, if you are having the 1% of curiosity, 1% of, I wonder if there's something there for me. Maybe. Who could I talk to? Maybe you have a friend. Maybe you have a sibling. Maybe you have a child, a parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, that anybody that a pastor, that you could go talk to and say, I need something more than what I got. I need to know about this Jesus guy. I need to know this God, this one who's in control, this one who has a plan, and it's a good plan. I need to know that personally. I need to know the one that can heal me from my addictions, the pain of my abortions, the overeating. I still overeat, whatever it may be, whatever it is that is prompting you to ask God to reveal himself. And however it might occur, through a friend, through a pastor, maybe there's a message. In fact, connect with Rush. Rush can connect you with some great pastors here in this community. And I would just, if there's any, I guess I would hope at the end of the day that anyone is listening to this. At the end of the day, what Rush and I know both want is for people to get to know Christ, because we know that Christ and Christ alone is what has completely transformed our lives. It is he alone who has given us hope. He continues to give us hope. I can have cancer, and it's really like a secondary conversation. I really don't hardly give it a thought when I'm talking about it, but I don't think it has any hold on me. I totally trust God to do what's in my best interest, because he always does. He always has. Cancer doesn't sound very good, but he's bringing me home some way or another. I'm confident of that. And he did ask Jesus to do some not so pleasant things. And what he reminded me the other day, that as his son, I too might be requested to do some not so pleasant things. But if I am, God will meet me just like he did Jesus. 3 days later, Jesus rose, and he wants you and I to be with him and to rise again from our own death. Without Christ, that's what we had, way of eternal death. So come and know Jesus. We'll give you hope and transformation.
Amen. Amen. Only hope. And I think that's the message of this conversation, that God is a God of hope. And, thank you for sharing that, Wayne. And I just want to encourage you all out there. If anything has stood out to you in our conversation today, would you please leave a comment in the comment section below, share what stood out to you, or share any kind of question or inquiry. We'll get back to you on that. And it also helps if you leave comments to push this out to more people, so more people can hear about this hope that is in our Lord Jesus. And so also like and subscribe. That helps as well. We greatly appreciate that around here. And again, Lord willing, until next time, we'll see you then.
God bless you.